You all have no idea how many times I have tried to record this video. Anyways, Happy New Year's everyone. I hope that you are off to a strong start in 2023. After debating it for a while, I figured that this should definitely be my first video to start the year off. I wanted to do something a little more, positive, uplifting, new year, new me kind of deal, but this is definitely the most important of any video idea I could think of. Originally, this was supposed to be tacked on to my video regarding the Raven of One situation, which, by the way, thank you everyone for the support on that. But after realizing how long that video turned out to be, I figured let's 86 this and put it on as its own video. I want to just take a bit of time to go on a pretty much unscripted rant about the future of credibility in K-pop and where I see it going. So like I mentioned in the Raven video, there have been a lot of idols that have been falsely accused of things, from 2019 with Wano to last year 2022, including but not limited to Woojin of Stray Kids, Jimin of AOA, Soojin of Idol, Garam of LE SSERAFIM, and potentially Lucas of NCT and Wavy, but since SM Entertainment refuses to update us on the situation, I don't know what's going on with that. The most I can tell is that since he hasn't been unfollowed by any of the official Wavy and NCT accounts and members, that he's still in the company, but who knows? That little tangent aside, I like to metaphorically look at social norms as a bit of a pendulum and where things stand. And right now, I feel like we're reaching a very dangerous part in the position of the pendulum in terms of accusations, victims, credibility, and so forth. What do I mean by that? Originally, we used to be a society in which if someone came forward, usually a woman, because if a man ever contemplated coming forward, they would be in fear of being seen as weaker or not masculine enough. So typically it would only be women coming forward with stories, and they would just be completely ignored. It wasn't even a matter of being believed or not. It was mostly just they say something and it just goes in one ear and out the other ear. That was bad. And then slowly the pendulum started moving more towards the middle, where you had both women receiving a platform in which they could tell their stories and be believed, and even some men starting to feel more comfortable discussing things that happened to them that originally they would have been too afraid of, in fear of how society would perceive them because of their openness and their vulnerability. And I still think that in the West, we're still more so in that middle region when it comes to the credibility of these kinds of cases. For example, in the early 2010s, Justin Bieber became the victim of false accusations where a woman was accusing him of fathering her child. I think he was only 15, 16 at the time. And then eventually it turned out that the woman was conspiring with the actual father of the child to just get money and extort it from Justin Bieber. But when the case first came out, I feel like there was a lot more nuance, a lot more objectivity, and people weren't as willing to side one way or the other. Keep in mind, these were the early 2010s, and Twitter wasn't as popular. YouTube, I'd say, really hit a boom in popularity in 2014, 2015, so not there yet. And we didn't have the popularity of apps such as Vine and TikTok, which have been used to really spread and perpetuate a lot of narratives about people, especially false ones, regarding celebrities, idols, etc. So it was typically up to people who are reading gossip columns and news tabloids to really catch wind of these sort of situations. And for the most part, other people were just not in the loop. But eventually the case was proven to be false, and Justin was able to continue having a very successful career. A similar but not the same sort of instance happened in 2017, where Melanie Martinez was accused of being a former friend of hers. Similar to a lot of these idols, when these accusations first surfaced, a lot of people were immediately bashing on Melanie. You saw fans tearing apart posters, burning clothes and other merch. Plenty of people online were saying things like, oh, I always knew that she was creepy and that's why I believe this, and yada yada. And then later down the line, it was proven that the person accusing her was actually lying about the entire thing. I believe they may have issued out an apology statement. I still haven't been able to confirm the validity of that or not. But the accusations themselves didn't line up, including things such as, if this person had been in such a terrible situation with Melanie, why were they still friends with her? Why were they still doing their makeup to dress up and essentially cosplay as her? So a lot of things didn't make sense. And eventually, Melanie was able to bounce back. She released her second album, K-12, with an accompanying movie to it. And now her third album is coming out sometime this year, I believe within the first or second quarter, and that should also have a movie to accompany it, but I don't know the specifics. But the point is, these people in the West have been able to prove their innocence, and they have been able to reignite their career and start over essentially, or continue from where they were. But unlike people like Justin and Melanie, K-pop idols just aren't as fortunate. I would say the only real exception to these major scandals that I've mentioned comes from Wonho, in that it doesn't seem like the accusations really follow him around like the others do. It's more so that people only talk about him in regards to his looks, how handsome he is, how fit he is, as opposed to his music. So I think that that really takes away from the accusations and places him in sort of a separate space where he doesn't need to worry about that. The other idols, though, unfortunately don't have the luxury that he does. When it comes to Woojin, their stays and aunties and just people who aren't even associated with the group still perpetuating these narratives that the accusations were true against him. They're saying things like he was kicked out of JYP Entertainment, things like he was horrible to the Stray Kids members, and there's absolutely nothing to substantiate any of these claims. And in fact, it's pretty easy to counter them because there's more evidence to the contrary than what these people are saying. And then if we look at Jimin, there are still people who would want to believe Mina over her, and there's some pretty prominent people on this platform that still have their videos up trying to portray Mina as this sort of victimized angel that had to endure leader Jimin and how horrible she was, when unfortunately that wasn't the case, and it was really just Mina being lazy and Jimin trying to do her best as leader to keep her group together, keep everyone focused, hardworking, and there was just a communication error. And then when we look at Gram, even though it was proven that she wasn't actually bullying the people who were accusing her and she was actually defending her friend from having pictures with either nudity or minimalist clothing posted on social media, she had to take the backlash. She went to school again, stopped being an idol, and became the victim of bullying there because people are still trying to push this narrative that she is in fact a bully. And I don't know what it is about these K-pop idols compared to people in the West. And that might actually be another thing, because Wonho started gaining more Western recognition. Maybe that's what's causing him to not have to deal with these accusations anymore. But with these K-pop idols that are still predominantly popular in Korea, they aren't able to escape this. And I'm starting to see the repercussions of these actions take form in defending those who were actually proven guilty. So for those of you who are unaware, over the last couple of years, there have been some idols accused of some pretty heinous activities. The first is former EXO member Chris Wu, and he was accused of using his power and status to influence underage women into drinking alcoholic beverages. Once they were inebriated, he would allegedly take advantage of them and have them perform sexual activities with him. And then the second idol is former Big Bang member Seungri, who was accused of funding prostitution in the infamous Burning Sun scandal, which involved a lot of the staff at YG Entertainment, which may or may not explain why they're having a lot of reconfiguring done with their idols and artists and groups and who's under which labels, and that company right now is just a burning dumpster fire. But even though the Beijing court system found Chris to be guilty and sentenced him to 13 years in jail, whereas the South Korean Supreme Court system also found Seungri to be guilty and sentenced him to 18 months in prison, along with various fines and other things as well on top of that. People are still trying to present them as being innocent. And a lot of that comes from these idols that were falsely accused. People are taking that and extrapolating the issue to include these idols that have been convicted by official legal bodies. They're saying things like, how do we know that these two idols, being Chris and Seungri, are actually guilty? What if all the evidence was doctored, manipulated, inorganic, like how we saw with the Raven situation, in that in my video I tried my best to break down all the things that didn't make sense, including the obviously spliced audio clips, and then things like OP covering up parts of images to hide something. Or we could also look at the Woojin situation, in which the original accuser had posted some alcoholic beverages at a bar and said that Woojin had bought them for them, when in reality it was determined that it was actually a different patron at a bar that was taking the photos that had nothing to do with Woojin, and the bar even released CCTV footage to the South Korean Seoul District Police, and it proved that Woojin wasn't even in the building at the time that those photos were being taken. But that's not stopping these fans of these actually convicted idols from saying, how do we know that false evidence isn't being used in the court system? And look, I am from the United States. I am very well aware as to how corrupt the court system can be, but at least it's proven from time to time, if not really the majority of the time, to be relatively fair. When Woojin and his company 10X Entertainment brought his case before the court system, it was proven that he was innocent. Whereas when Soojin brought her case, it was proven that she wasn't a bully, but she couldn't prove that the accuser was maliciously targeting her and trying to defame her when bringing up the accusations. So the court system is relatively fair in these sorts of cases. Or at least it's proven to be, is what I should say. But I am really afraid for the future of victims coming forward, and even when they do present tangible, concrete evidence to prove and condemn those who have done misdeeds, they won't be believed, because if the person's of a certain status, they can now say, well, look, we had all these idols get falsely accused, they are proven to be innocent. Who's to say that this person isn't just another auntie that's trying to ruin their careers? And the problem is that this is happening in South Korea, a very conservative country when it comes to social issues like this, compared to the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK, etc. The first president of South Korea was actually caught up in a number of scandals and basically became a representative image as to why, quote unquote, women can't be trusted, or they're sneaky and malicious. This country has a very hostile relationship with the feminist movement, look at the idol Irene of Red Velvet. She had spoken at one point about reading a feminist novel, and her fans were burning her merchandise. I don't know why it's always burning merchandise. It's like, guys, be careful with the arson here. You might accidentally hurt yourselves, but yeah, her fans were destroying her merchandise, demanding apologies. They just were so upset that Irene would talk about feminism because this country has been conditioned to believe that feminism is not a pro-women's movement and it's an anti-man movement. It's meant to upset the culture. It's meant to remove men from their job positions, ruin their livelihoods, which, as you may be aware in the Western side of the world, feminism is sometimes labeled as feminazism by those who oppose the movement and want to portray it as something it's not, being anti-men, when it's really just raising women up to being seen as equivalent. But in South Korea, they're still in that mindset, at least the majority of the male population, especially in Seoul, that feminism is meant to ruin their careers, their livelihoods, and when you see all these women coming forward and falsely accusing male idols of things that they didn't do, again, I'm not talking about those that were actually convicted, I'm talking about Wonho, Woojin, Raven, potentially Lucas, etc. It's just further perpetuating this idea that women can't be trustworthy and all that they're good for right now is ruining men's lives and they shouldn't be believed. And I'm afraid that that's what we're going to reach as a society, is the pendulum is going to go all the way to the other side, and instead of just people being ignored, they're going to be bullied. And those who are truly victims, they are going to be silenced. And I also want to bring up the future of K-pop as a whole and how it pertains to BTS. So as some of you may be aware, BTS has decided to go on a bit of a hiatus for the next couple of years while they focus on more solo endeavors, including military enlistment for those who are Korean, or at least males holding a Korean citizenship. It is expected that you enlist in the military at, I believe it's sometime before the age of 28, and possibly 35 is the absolute oldest you can be, but I'm not 100% sure on the ages. But basically in BTS's case, they're supposed to enlist by 28. Unfortunately, there has been the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of that, they were given an extension to being 30. And Jin right now has reached that age and now is enlisted in the military. And more members will follow suit. The issue is that when members are in the military, they are more vulnerable because they're not as readily available to defend themselves in the event that someone does come and issue a false accusation against them. So I'm just afraid that with 3 particular members, if they're serving their military enlistment, people are going to try to take that opportunity to tear them down. And the 3 members I'm afraid of the most are RM, Suga, and J-Hope, which coincidentally is their entire rap line. Why do I say those 3 in particular? RM gets a lot of hate for quote-unquote being ugly, and J-Hope gets that as well. I'm like, y'all need glasses because they are so freaking handsome, but continuing. And also some people don't like his demeanor. They think he's very braggadocious, egotistical with how smart he is. It's like, he can't help the fact that he's smart, okay? And the fact that he learned English from watching Friends with and without subtitles and whatever. But some people are jealous of the fact that he is so intelligent and they try to pay him out to be something that he's not. Again, being like some egomaniac. And then, since I mentioned J-Hope, I'll continue on him. He consistently is the least liked member of BTS. Not like people hate him per se, But if you were to survey 1 billion armies, he would be the person that gets voted the least for who someone's bias is. Usually if you ask armies who their bias is, most of them usually defer to the Magne line, being Jimin, V, and Jungkook. So I'm just afraid that J-Hope might have the same issue as both Woojin and Raven, where they're kind of seen as the quote-unquote ugly member. Again, y'all need to go to an optometrist because none of these men are ugly in my opinion, but because of that, people want them removed from the group as they see those members as ruining the visuals of said group. And in South Korea and K-pop particularly, visuals are so important to the point of pretty much being sacred. And if you are seen as essentially the ugly duckling of your group, people are going to try to get rid of you if they can. And then we have Suga. Just like the other two members, anyone who says that this man is ugly, I need y'all to seek professional help because, yeah, he's not. But what he is intimidating. And you can especially see this in his solo works, like in Deshwita, in that he comes off as, like, again, a very intimidating presence. And people do get scared by people like that. If you look at Monsta X fans, a lot of them will tell you that before they really got into the group, they were actually scared of the group because all the guys are like these very handsome, buff guys doing these very dark, intense concepts, and yeah, it can be scary at times. So that's why I'm afraid for those three members in particular, because people try to portray RM as being like conceited when he seems to be such a selfless person. They say J-Hope as being the least liked member, even though, like, how could anyone dislike someone with that kind of just positive energy? And Suga is very intimidating, and some people like that about him, and that's why some people love his music and his stage presence, but some people can be turned away by it. And it's unfortunate because, aside from, in my opinion, being good looking, all these guys do come off as being really good role models, and I think that's why BTS has amalgamated such success. But with that success, they have unfortunately created a bit of a barrier to entry in K-pop going to the Western market. And they pretty much are the K-pop representatives when it comes to who the Western market sees as the face of K-pop. Look at all of these Western award shows, cough cough, the Grammys, that refuse to incorporate a K-pop subcategory or add more K-pop artists to the list of nominees, and they just plaster BTS everywhere and say, okay, wipe our hands, we're clean, we include K-pop, they'll watch the award show, we'll get a bunch of views, and we don't have to worry about it. So BTS has inadvertently become the K-pop representative group in the West. And because of that, a lot of people are going to want to tear them down. So I'm just really afraid that when the three members that I mentioned go off on their military enlistment, people are going to take advantage of that. If you're listening to this and you are an army, be prepared to mobilize in case any of this happens, because when the Raven situation was coming out, a lot of people were saying like, oh no, someone wouldn't make up false accusations against some nobody from a company that nobody knows of, being Raven and ONEUS from Rainbow Bridge World Entertainment, which is a pretty small company compared to the big three being SM, JYP, and YGE, as well as big hit Hybe labels, which is where BTS finds home. But people were saying, why would someone go through the effort of making false accusations about someone like Raven? They would go after a bigger group like Stray Kids, EXO, BTS. So that mentality really scares me in worrying about what's going to happen to BTS. And if these accusations come out, we have seen plenty of people on radio stations, news stations, podcasts, etc., express their disliking of BTS, to put it lightly, they're going to roll with things. So if any accusations do come out, be prepared to debunk them, because I am just so afraid as to what's going to happen if they do get accused of something, and then the ripple effect it's going to have as we see what the world really thinks about K-pop as a whole, as a genre, as an industry, and just the fans in general. So yeah, that was my pretty much off-script rant. I am sorry that I was very kind of sporadic with it, but yeah, I really think that it needs to be addressed, the fact that there have been so many false accusations, and it's going to come back to bite us all at some point or another, in that eventually either A, someone that's really guilty is going to not be viewed as guilty because of that, and they're not going to face the consequences they should, or B, we're going to move into an era in which not only are victims ignored, but they're not even allowed to have a platform. If they say anything bad about someone, they're going to be bullied and harassed into doing the unthinkable, and I just don't want to live in that future. So if there's one thing that I really hope we leave in 2022 and prior, when it comes to especially K-pop specifically, is this trend of making false claims about people we don't like. We're only a week in, and the Boys Planet 999 contestants on, which is an Mnet survival series, they're already seeing false accusations, especially against Jade Chang, because apparently someone called him daddy in a live stream and he tried to make a joke about it and people found it to be cringy. I'm like, guys, the only thing that this shows me is that he watched a lot of Jim Carrey movies growing up, with the type of humor he tried to elicit in making fun of the person calling him daddy. Like, which, by the way, can we also leave calling idols like mommy and daddy and a bunch of other sexual nicknames and innuendos? Like, y'all want to call Jay cringe, but in my opinion, doing that is cringe. I will never forget the people that in a FaceTime call with Han of Stray Kids tried to keep calling him baby and sexy, and he was visibly uncomfortable. And then another one called Yoonjin of Stray Kids and was trying to get him to call her mommy, and I'm like, ugh, no, stop, like, don't. So yeah, two things that need to be left in 2022. One is false accusations against idols, and two is sexualizing idols. Aside from that, I will see you guys on maybe Friday or Saturday with a new video, but we'll see how long that takes to edit. I'm hoping it's going to be sooner than later, but yeah, thank you for listening to this very discombobulated and not really well thought through rant video, but I just had to talk about it. Anyways, thank you guys again for the continued support. I hope you're all doing well. Remember to stay happy, healthy, and hydrated. Until next time, peace out.